Let the sun shine. Let the sun shine. Let the sun shine. Let the sun shine. Let the sun shine.
All right. How's everybody doing tonight?
Hey, Charlie.
How you doing, Mr. Bowman?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I thought since you was from UT, I thought I would rep the Longhorns.
I
Hook 'em home.
I appreciate that. It's a good look.
Yeah, you know, it's not every day that I rep my my Longhorns because I'm such a bias.
You love to Howard. I know.
Yeah.
Make my wife happy. Give her the love.
Exactly. Give her her due. Yeah, Jill. So we're going to let some people come on first, but I want to welcome everybody to the show tonight. Hey, Jill, how are you? And Abby and Karen. Thank you guys for coming on and watching. We'll give you a couple of more minutes. How's the weather down there in Texas?
Man, it is great. It is great. It's probably 75 degrees and there's sunshine everywhere.
Okay.
Great. Low humidity.
Can't beat that. We had one of these perfect blue skies that was almost reminiscent of September 11th, it was so clear that day. You remember it, you know, and that's how it looks up, you know, today it's beautiful. So, hey, Karen and Morgan and Sonia, we're going to get started. I have the one and only Mr. Randy Bowman here on the show tonight. He is the founder of At Last. But before I talk to you guys about Randy and what he has done there, Randy is an accomplished entrepreneur. He's a leader. He's a businessman. He's been in he's from Dallas, Texas. So he's doing all of this great work in Dallas, Texas. For those who are coming on board tonight, you guys are in for a treat because when you talk about social impact, when we want to talk about social innovation, when you want to talk about education, what this guy is doing right now in Dallas, Texas, you want to pay attention to what he's doing. Some of the other things that Randy has done in his life, he is the co-founder and co-owner. He was of a successful logistics company that he sold off back in 2017. And prior to that, he was a corporate finance lawyer practicing for about, 12 years, you said?
12 years, yes.
Okay. Currently, right now, he invests basically in industrials and underinvested portions of urban area right there in Dallas. The sections of Redbird and Marlow 1. So for you people out there in the big D, as they call it, you guys know what that is about. He's also served on select boards. He is on the board of the City of Dallas Employee Retirement Fund that is valued at $3.7 billion. The pension for all city employees who are not police and fire. He has a BA from University of Texas. So I'm repping that for him tonight since he didn't want to rep that. And he is also a magna cum laude graduate of Whittier College School of Law, where he served as the editor-in-chief of the Law Review. So that's a lot of work there, Mr. Bowman.
It's been fun.
It's been fun. But tonight, while we're here to talk about all his commitment and what he has done as founder of At Last. So why don't you tell everybody about At Last and how this all came about?
Okay, so I'll tell you how it all came about. Ultimately, your life winds up being, the things you do in life wind up being a reflection of your experiences at some level. Mm-hmm. And so At Last is really designed to solve the problems that were faced by my mother and I as I was growing up in the southern Dallas portion of Dallas, Pleasant Grove. I'm a Pleasant Grove boy.
All right.
And my mother, largely by herself, raised us. There were 4 of us and there were her over in that part of town. It's a really difficult part of town. Poverty is rampant over there. Mm-hmm. And there were really 2 challenges that faced us. One that was sort of unique to a woman trying to raise 4 kids in a very difficult area. And the other set of challenges fairly unique to the children trying to figure out how they were going to piece together something good in life out of the environment that they found themselves in.
Right.
Great part of town, great people, but just burdened by poverty. And so that's where I grew up. And so as you become older and you become a little more introspective and you get toward the other side of your career, you've made a decent amount of money, and now you want to figure out, what do I want to do with the rest of my professional time?
Right.
And what you want to do is you want to reach back and try and solve some of the problems that were your problems and your neighbors and friends' problems when you were younger. And At Last is really that. So At Last looks to make sure that people living in poverty, primarily mothers and grandmothers, have an opportunity to give their elementary school age children the kind of education that children who are growing up in a more prosperous environment are able to get.
Okay.
It is an urban boarding experience. It is not a school. We are not a school.
Okay.
Here's what we do. We take a look at a fact, and then we ask ourselves a question. Here's a fact. And this is really the premise behind At Last. A lot rests on this. For as long as anybody who's watching this program has been alive, the kids who perform best in school are the ones who come out of households that have middle class or above resources. So if you're middle class or above, you perform best in school. And that's true even if you control for the quality of the school. It's true when you control for race. It's true when you control for gender. It's simply true. Right. And so if that's a fact, and it is, then At Last asks a different question. At Last asks the question of, how would impoverished kids perform in school if you gave them the benefit of having middle class or above educational resources and tools during the 17 hours a day that they are not in school?
Right.
We seek to help them perform better during the 7 hours a day that they are in school by giving them better educational resources and tools during the 17 hours a day that they are not in school.
Right. And I think one thing, what I love about you, when I read about what you were doing and what I got excited about, because I'm passionate about education, number one. So what is so obvious now, and it's so blatantly obvious, the pandemic exposed really the inequalities of education amongst people of color, when we had to go from in-school learning to remote learning. I know I'm a son of a father of 6 kids, and my father had a 6th grade degree, and basically he had 9 different businesses. And he always used to talk about his chaotic environment. He was one of 21 kids. So to see him do what he did, he was a big role model in my life, because of just really thinking about all the conditions that he grew up in, but then how he set us apart and how he instilled education. So really, when I heard about your project and what you were doing, and I was just like, boy, talk about social impact, talk about social innovation, talk about really being on the front end of trying to save these kids, so therefore we're not dealing with them on the back end of getting in trouble, getting them out of the criminal justice system. You are putting your money where your mouth is, based on, as you stated, your past and your upbringing. So, and that's what just really got me going and thinking about that. So this urban boarding experience, how does that work in the school? I know we're going to put up some pictures later of what you're building currently right now in Dallas to kind of walk people through that. But right now, talk about how it all came about, and when did you realize this was the thing that you really wanted to give back to?
How did it all come about, and when did I think that it's what I wanted to do? I'll start with the second part first, if you don't mind. Okay. So, my thought was, it was so incredibly difficult for my mother to be able to raise her children in the environment that she had to raise them in. And she had hopes and dreams of her own that had to be abandoned because she's got 4 kids. Right. And if you're raising your kids and you're going to work and then you come home and you're riding the bus both ways, you lose a lot of time. By the time you get home and you do things for your kids, you really don't have a lot of time to do anything for you. It was usually 11 or 12 o'clock at night before she finished with us, because we were locked, right? And so at 11 or 12 o'clock at night, when she's now free to work on her, she can't really attend a Dallas Community College class and get certification to become a nurse.
Right.
She can't take a management trainee class. She has no social mobility in her life, despite having a lot of intelligence and a lot of capability.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to have something that honored my journey with her by having something that would enable a mother today who found herself in my mom's circumstance.
Okay.
I also wanted to provide a ladder of social mobility for children who found themselves in the conditions that my brothers and sister and I were in growing up in the Grove. So I needed something that worked for that mother who's a young mother who has a lot of children, a lot of talent, but she has no time. She needs a time dividend. And I needed something that worked for those children so that they would have hope despite what they saw in front of them.
Okay.
And the greatest elevator is education. And so as I was contemplating the sale of my logistics company, the thought was, what should be next? And I couldn't think of a better way to spend the rest of my good cognitive time than honoring the journey that I had with my mom during my earliest years. That sort of when.
Right. Is your mom still living?
She is still living, bless her heart. She is the best.
Okay.
I'm perfectly willing to have other mothers be tied for right?
Yeah.
Do that by herself. She is the best.
But good.
And she is still living, and we are thankful for her as she exists now. Her health has been failing, so we are thankful for her as she is now.
All right, I appreciate that. Well, for you guys who just came on board, I have Randy Bowman. He is the founder of At Last, which is an urban boarding experience. It's not a school. It's not a boarding school. It's basically a boarding home for kids who are in impoverished neighborhood. Living conditions, basically, that give them the opportunity to be able to have an environment that allows them to study, allows them to learn how to socialize, basically, and focus on who they are as an individual and really find themselves without being in an environment that is troublesome in a way. I guess you could say that as well. What else you want to add to that?
Well, I feel like I should at least explain for you how it works, right? Mm-hmm. So the children who are in our program are elementary school age children. We start with them early for all the obvious reasons. If you believe in any of the research behind early childhood education, right, you know why you have to start early. So we start with them early so that they become really proficient learners in school from an early age. Mm-hmm. That will allow them to stay engaged. So the way that it works is this: if you're going to be in our program, it's because you have a substantial challenge in life. That is typically going to be poverty. We are here to serve the poor, but the aspirational. I mean, that's who we're here to serve. These are not bad families. These are actually great families. These are moms who remind me of my own, and my mom is my hero. So these are not bad people. These are great people.
How do you choose the individual students that will be in the program?
So we want to serve primarily the families that live in the neighborhood where we have built the residence.
Okay.
So we invite them to apply. And we've invited them through all the usual channels that you go through in the communities that we serve. The church, the community center, the elected officials. We have gone through all the ways that we typically approach them. We invite them to apply. They apply. The standard that they have to meet is this: we are going to prefer those who qualify for free and reduced lunch because we want to serve the poor.
Okay.
They enter. We do not screen them for whether or not they have enough aptitude to be college bound, because that's really not our point. Our point is to allow you to develop that child to the best of what the Lord has placed in that child, whether they're college bound or not. And then we conduct a lottery of all the children who have applied. And so this year we're 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. That's the cohort that we start with. They make application. We put the applicants through our lottery software. The lottery software chooses the winners because that's the only fair way that I can think of to allocate opportunity. And those who come out of that become our first cohort.
Okay.
Once we get them selected, they show up with us. This is the nuts and bolts of the program. What basically happens is this: the children come to the residence on Sunday afternoon. They have Sunday afternoon with their families. They come to the residence and they get taken through our program, At Last program. throughout Sunday evening. They wake up the next day and they go to school.
Okay.
The school that's being chosen for them by their parents. We do not choose schools for families.
Okay.
Once school is out, they return to the residence, and we get them again this sort of optimized developmental ecosystem. They get to the benefit of all the educational resources and tools that we've infused into the home.
Mm-hmm. You want to talk about that? Because you mentioned that. You said optimized developmental ecosystem. What does that consist of?
Yeah, think of it like this. All we're really trying to do is to replicate what it is that well-resourced parents provide their children in their homes during the evening.
Mm-hmm.
So we're making sure that they become proficient learners. That's really the nuts and bolts of it. We're making sure that they become proficient learners, that they understand the process of learning. It's no
Right.
different than Jill and I did with our kids when they came home from school. We would sit
Mm-hmm.
down with them, we would help them with their homework, but we
Right.
wanted to help them understand the process of learning, the art of learning, the science of learning, sort of what it is that you need to do to have mastered material.
Mm-hmm.
That's what everybody does with their child when they come home from school. Everyone who has the resources to make that happen.
Right.
And so we're going to make sure that these kids have in their lives the resources that they can become proficient learners the same way they would if they were fortunate enough to be born into families that had more resources available to them.
Okay. So they stay with you from Sunday night until basically Friday, and then they go back home during the weekend. Is that how that works?
Yes, after school on Friday, they go back home to their primary residence, to their family.
Right.
They are home in their primary residence on weekends, on holidays, and for the fullness of the summer. They are ultimately with their family more days during the year than they are with us.
Right.
And that is by design.
Right. Okay. Because you don't want to separate them, especially at that age. You said third, fourth, and fifth grade. You said third, fourth, and fifth grade. You have your first.
Third, fourth, and fifth grade.
Okay. How many people in this initial program, initial program that you're starting? How many kids will you serve?
So in the initial cohort, we are designing it to serve 16.
Okay.
The house that we're building has 5,700 square feet. We will have more than enough room to accommodate 16. There is a chance that we modify the size of that cohort based upon ongoing conversations that we're having with the epidemiologists in Dallas County regarding what's going to be a safe environment. But we plan to serve 16, and we will serve 16.
Okay. And then how do you plan to scale it? What does that?
So Jill and I bought 4 acres on which to host this program. And so House 1 will have the 16 students involved, the 16 scholars in residence, I should call them.
Okay.
We have enough room on the land to build House 2. House 2 on that land will add another 82 scholars in residence. And then we have room for a House 3. And that House 3 will also add another 82 scholars in residence. Okay. Ultimately, it'll take 5 to 7 years, by the way, to scale that out. But ultimately, over the course of that time, you're serving 180 scholars in residence.
Wow.
From that site, from 3 different houses. Obviously, House 2 and House 3 are substantially larger than House 1. But I'm a business guy. And so what I know is this. You take your product and you refine your product, and then you enhance it, and then you scale on success. Once we have tested the product and gotten it exactly the way that we want, we will scale. And we'll be scaling on success. That's the plan. Okay.
Well, let's just show people what you are designing so they will have an understanding of what it is that you are, where kids would look. So this is the final.
That's House 1 in the foreground.
Okay.
In the background, you'll see in grayscale House 2 and House 3.
All right.
And those trees are not computer generated. This is Oak Cliff in Dallas, and those trees are real.
Okay. All right.
There they are right there. You see?
Good rendering. Good rendering.
Yeah,
and where you guys are right now?
Well, we're a little farther along in the construction than this. This is during the framing portion of the construction. So we were at about 25% at that point. We're at 40% now. It's a good representation of the direction where we're going.
All right. And then this is a typical bedroom for the kids?
Yes, that's one of the suites for the scholars in residence. And you'll notice that it's really about light, it's about color, and it's about aspiration. That's sort of the design. We're not building the Taj Mahal, but we don't want the kids to feel as if we see them as second class.
Right.
So this is their space.
Okay. And this is the kitchen area?
That is the kitchen. So that's the area where they will hang out and eat, much in the way that the kids do. They like to hang out in the little banquettes that you see back there by the map of the world.
Right.
Hang out in that space, and then we'll obviously bring them around the table when we want to actually have them get together for a larger dinner.
Okay. And then your typical bathroom.
The vanity bathroom. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Again, lots of lights and lots of color.
Okay. And this young woman right here, she's very special. Who is she?
Yes. That is my neighbor. So she lives across, she's our neighbor to the east.
Okay.
One. And this woman walked across the construction site on that walker that you saw. 80 something years old. I think she's 82. She has a great grandson who's 8 years old, and she would like for him to be in the program. She's been as supportive and welcoming as she could possibly be. She's absolute greatness.
Okay. All right. I love that. I love it. What are some of the challenges you're facing currently right now with the school? I mean, with the building, excuse me, not school.
Yeah. So the biggest challenge with the program right now is the same challenge that everybody else is having, which is, what does the coronavirus mean for your planning as you go forward? We don't know when it is that schools are going to start. So it's impossible for us to plan as tightly to the school schedule as we would like. We don't know when the DISD is going to start, nor the private schools, nor the charter schools. We just have no way of knowing that.
Right.
So uncertainty is not helping. But it's a dynamic that we can manage. The bottom line is that we have to be able to make good decisions with incomplete information. And so we can do that. We'll be ready. Once we have an idea of what they are going to do, we will be ready.
Right. And so you said you work with all the different agencies, city agencies of the city of Dallas. Your position, I'm quite sure you're tied into the whole neighborhood and what's going on in the community. They've been very receptive of that. Any additional partners? Are you looking for corporate partners? Are you looking for people to invest into the project, or is this something that you're doing on your own? Where are you from a financial standpoint with this?
So from a financial standpoint with it, I'll tell you, nobody goes out and supports your dream before you do.
Right.
So Jill and I had to go first with our money and our resources. And that was fine. Obviously, we were prepared to do that, and we did do that. We've made sacrifice in that area, and we are happy to have done it. We've gotten support from the largest grant makers in town, the ones who have the most resources and do the best job of vetting nonprofit initiatives, have reviewed us and have said, we really like it and we want to contribute to it. And they have. So we've gotten the vetting and the contribution from the largest players in town. We got a grant from the city of Dallas, an economic development grant, which was great because that's, again, the city protecting the taxpayers' dollars. So trust me, we went through a lot to get that. The thing that I'm most proud about, though, is every suite. You showed the picture of the suites of the scholars in residence. Every one of those suites bears the name of an African-American family in Dallas that contributed to be the naming rights donor for that suite and made the contribution to get it built. I'm extremely proud of that. You hear often that the African-American community is not philanthropic. I want to tell you that when we give them something that they actually believe in, that truism falls apart.
Right.
They've been really supportive here. Having said that, I will tell you, we could use more contributions. We could use more donations. We're going to have to pay for the programming that we're applying to these kids. There's no free ride. That's just not the way it works. So I would encourage people to go to www.atLastBoarding.com. And, if you feel so inspired, please, share with us. And I'll give you that link so that you can include it in your space. You have a huge network.
Definitely. So we got some people that just came on board. So we want to welcome everybody to the show. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. I have Randy Bowman, who is the founder of At Last, which is an urban boarding home experience for kids who are from the. I think you said you're going to start out also too from the age of 1st to 6th grade, but right now this initial is 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders.
That's correct.
Correct. Okay. So let's go to the see what some of the people are saying out here, and they got some questions for you.
Okay.
So Suzette said, "Is there an engagement component for parents of the children at last?"
There is an engagement component.
Mm-hmm.
Again, with my mom being my hero, I don't envision lives for children where the moms are X'd out. That's not the way that it works.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we have a few different engagement components, one of which is the parents coming through twice a week and having dinner with the kid, if that fits the parents' number one desire, and number two, schedule. Remember, the parents get a vote in this also. So we have that engagement, which I think is going to be great for us. The other thing is, one of the things that my mom really suffered from was this notion of getting things for free because she didn't have money to pay. And she wanted to be able to buy back some of her dignity by offering the things that she had rather than being asked for the things she didn't have. She didn't have money, so she couldn't give you that. But she could show up and she could give you services to help offset the cost of you helping her child. So we're going to present opportunities for the parents to come through and volunteer during the week while their child is at school. They can come in and tidy up the area where their child sleeps and leave notes for them and leave just encouragement for them. And what we'll do with that is this: it'll help us to reduce the operating costs that we have at the house. So for every hour that they volunteer, we can create actually a receipt and a thank you that goes to them. So that at the end of every month, they know the value of the time that they've contributed back to us. And we tell them thank you for that. And they know then that they have paid for their child to be there in that facility. And it allows them to buy back some of their dignity and gets them tied closer to the program. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
Yeah. What are some of the metrics you're going to use for the kids to see how they're progressing?
Yeah, so the metrics that's an area where we spent a lot of time. We spent more time in safety and well-being than anywhere, but the metrics were the second thing. This thing needs to work. It doesn't need to simply feel good, right? So there are really 3 areas that we measure. One are near-term metrics, another would be midterm metrics, and the other would be long-term metrics. So I'll go through them really quickly, but I'll give you all 3 of them. One is this: since we're dealing with elementary school age kids, we need to go by metrics that predict whether or not they're going to be high school graduates, because that's the first step for social mobility.
Right.
So we looked to a study out of the state of Wisconsin where they identified a set of metrics that you can apply to elementary school age students that have predictive value for whether or not those students will graduate high school. And so one of them is attendance percentage. Another is reading at grade level. Another would be disciplinary reports. And another would be not being retained at your grade level for multiple years. Those were the 4 real staples that they tapped into. And so those are the ones that we are measuring for our elementary school age kids. We're going to compare that kid against that kid's performance during the prior year. So the kid against the kid, that's a horizontal analysis. And then we're also going to compare that kid against how that kid performs against their peers. Peers who are in the same school with them, but not in our program. Kids who are in other schools within the district, but they're not in our program. And then kids across the state of Texas. So we'll be using that set of metrics as our near term. The midterm metric is real simple. Did they graduate from high school or did they not? So by the time they leave our program, we're 6 years from knowing how that turned out. That's our midterm metric. We will measure that, we'll track it, and we'll report it. The last metric is a long-term metric. And I'll go through this one really quickly because it's detailed. We want to make sure that these kids don't become what a study out of Columbia University labeled as lost opportunity youth.
Explain to the audience.
Yeah, so these professors out of Columbia and State College of New York developed a formula that quantified the cost to society when a child winds up being a child who doesn't prosper in life. What does it cost us to detain them? What does it cost us to supervise them once they're no longer detained? What does it cost us in terms of loss to the tax base and to that kid's ability to be productive in society? Now, that's strictly a quantitative measure. Atlas is a lot more concerned about the qualitative outcomes in that child's life. But if we're going to do the measurements and I'm going to ask grant makers for money, I'm going to have to look at some quantitative measures as well.
Right.
That's our near term, that's our midterm, that's our long term set of metrics. These kids will be measured and it'll be done by a third party evaluator.
Okay. Do you have an advisory board?
You know, we have a great board of directors and we have 11 advisory boards in substantive areas. The challenge with our advisory board is that if you like honorifics, like you want to get on a board and it's just an honor because your name is there, we don't have that because that doesn't really advance the mission a lot.
Right.
But we have a tremendous board of directors.
Okay.
Our board of directors includes a C-level executive from AT&T. It includes a senior executive from one of the largest real estate development companies in town, the ex chief operating officer and general counsel of the Dallas Housing Authority. We have really tremendous people on our board. We have great talent there.
Okay. Okay. Some questions that people coming in. Marvin said, hey, thanks. Highlighting Mr. Bowman's project is really interesting. Everybody says it's a great idea. How it's successful. We talked about that. Testings, grades, social behaviors. What psychological work, if any, will be provided, keeping scholars feeling connected to their home life? And I think you kind of spoke to that about the parents coming in and being able to contribute and giving hours so they still feel like they're parenting their child, which I love.
And they're with them more days in the year than they are with us. You know, and the only way your child winds up in our program is if you choose our program for your child. We do not allow coercive appointments. So there is no fostering circumstance where the state decides that your child's in our program. Everybody whose child is in Atlas has chosen us.
Okay, good. Leslie said, my heart is exploding. Me and my partners have been working on developing something very similar for homeless youth. That's a great idea. Were you able to receive any state and federal grants? You said you got some state grants. Anything from the federal government?
No, we had a grant from the city. And so we have not applied for state money, and it was not always clear that we would apply for city money just yet.
Okay.
My view of it is that a solution needs to be proven. You need to prove the premise and prove that it can work before you expect a lot of taxpayer dollars to come in behind that solution. So our notion is that we're going to prove the premise, and once we've proven the premise, we will go for state dollars and we will go for federal dollars. And we felt it was fine to go for the city dollars because honestly, Jill and I have more money in than the city does. So that's our plan. We think we have to prove the premise so before we get state and federal money.
Okay. Okay. What happens to the kids after 6th grade?
Yeah.
Once what, like they are excited. Are you helping them? I mean, and then they got to be thrust back into that environment. Do you feel as though that's a point where they have the necessary skills of knowing how to achieve, wanting to achieve? Is that the goal? What happens there? How do you measure that?
This is truly one of those areas where I spent a lot of time, and it's useful that I'm trying to solve a problem that I lived and not one that I heard about, because we spent a lot of time in this area. So here's the deal. After the 6th grade, we would have lost these children from this program one way or another, given the demographic that we're serving, because we're serving the impoverished. My mother needed me to go to work at 11 to help her make it work around the house. Many of the families that we are serving will be in that same circumstance. So for that reason, pragmatically, we would have lost these children after the 6th grade anyway. If you told my mom that you wanted me to come and be in your program instead of going to work, she would have been like, that's fine, but how are we supposed to make these bills work? So that wouldn't have happened. That's one reason. Here's another reason. Mother Nature is undefeated, right? When it comes to puberty and adolescence, Mother Nature is undefeated. I am not going to issue her first loss. I'm not good. I'm not going to be able to keep boys and girls away from each other. I'm not going to be able to risk manage it. I'm not going to be able to insure against it.
Okay.
They've gotten beyond 6th grade. I
Right.
don't trust the ability to do that.
Okay.
So for that reason, you
Mhm.
can't have them there beyond the 6th grade. But here's what you can do. We
Mhm.
make great relationships with entities who mentor middle school kids as they progress through middle school and then go into high school.
Mhm.
Make those strong referrals in those mentoring relationships. We stay in touch with these kids and we track them as they move. And
Mhm.
then we ask them to come back in so that they can volunteer and mentor the 2nd grader who's sleeping in the bed that they slept in when they were in the program.
Right.
Our best chance is to stay engaged with them and to recognize where it is that we can serve effectively and where it is that we need to recognize our limitations.
Right.
That's
Have
our
you thought about partnering with any boarding schools to continue that whole experience, since they are gaining some sense of independence? And at that point in time, I feel as though a couple of years, 2 years in, 3 years in, 4 years into your program, they start to understand, and the parents even have an understanding of what it is. And I think they will see the success and the advancement of their kids. They might want them to continue. Okay, I'm tongue-tied. Continue getting their education. Is that on the table as an option?
So, Charlie, this is where you're really good and you make people feel real comfortable with you, like they're just sitting in the living room and not telling all of your audience the stuff, right? So, let me tell you what we think about that. The bottom line is this: we are not building official relationships with schools or education service providers, because you start to choose not only allies in that effort, but you also choose enemies.
Okay,
When
right.
you don't want to. We need to be agnostic on school choice.
Mhm.
Because the bottom line is this: we have an independent school district out there that depends on enrollment for its funding from the state.
Okay.
We have private schools out there that do a great job. And they sit in competition with those public schools. We have charter schools out there who are seen also in competition with them. We
Mhm.
love them all.
Mhm.
In fact, we are agnostic because we think it's not our place to choose where the kid goes to school. We started this off by us saying that the kids who perform best in school are the ones who come out of households that have middle class or above education resources and tools,
Right.
not the ones who go to this type of school or that type of school. If it doesn't drive the outcome that we're trying to create, we should be agnostic on it, especially if it brings us enemies by making a choice.
Okay.
We will introduce them to every option,
Right. Right.
private, charter, boarding, and we will let them choose. And once they make the choice, we will be happy in that choice and we do all that we can to help them succeed.
Okay. Well, some more questions. As I said, we have Randy Bowman, founder of At Last. You guys got to go back and listen to the beginning of this, because if you're all about social impact, social innovation, education of children, this man has the solution. And I think I can just see this just going from city to city to city to city to city. I'm ready to join your board of directors. What's the give and get?
Bring it. I'll take you, Charlie. I'll take you, brother.
Well, so let's go. Let's ask some questions here and see what Rolling said, what will foster kids have any opportunities to be a scholar there?
That's one of the things where it would have to be as a result of the parent making that decision in an uncoerced fashion. We will not take appointments from the foster system.
Okay.
So no court will be able to make an appointment into us. No fostering agency will be able to make an appointment into us, because we've worked with pediatric psychologists to ensure that nothing that we do harms the relationship between the parent and the child in this transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we have taken as a tenet from those conversations with multiple pediatric psychologists is this does not harm the family as long as there's no discord with the parent regarding the child being in the program. So the only way a child can be in this program is if the parent makes the choice. Mm-hmm. So if there's a kid who was once in foster and is now back with the parent because the parent is deemed to have created a safe environment, that parent can apply that child for this program. If the parent is in a fostering situation, if the child rather is in a fostering situation or anything where the judicial system is making the decision, we would not accept that application.
Okay. Okay. Will you provide service to children with special needs and IEPs from Val?
Yeah, so this is where it continues to get interesting,
Mhm.
right?
It's the layers.
Yeah, yeah. And
A lot of layers, yeah.
I'll take it. Like, bring me your layers. The bottom line, we're not a school,
Right.
right?
Right.
If we're
Okay.
not a school,
Yeah.
there is no infrastructure that has that type of resource commitment to that. What we're replicating again is not what a school does with kids during the day, during these 7 hours a day that they're in school. We're replicating what it is that well-resourced parents do with kids during these 17 hours a day that they are at home.
Got
So
it.
that's context. Here's answer. The answer is this. If a child has the type of dynamics that could typically be managed
Mhm.
and improved upon in a typical middle class home,
Mhm.
then our program is designed to serve that child.
Okay.
But if they have challenges or traits that are more profound than can typically be handled and improved upon in a typical middle class home, then we are not equipped to serve that. That's beyond the reach of our program. We
Okay.
have to know who we are, what our limitations are, and what our capabilities are, and not get beyond our capabilities.
Would you another layer? Would you have a child psychologist or a therapist as a part of the boarding experience if you find that you need that?
Oh, we already do. I mean, it's the first person after Jill, the first person that I visited with about this is Jill and Eddie Reeves. Those were my first two. The next person that I visited with was a pediatric psychologist over at SMU, Southern Methodist University, who
Mhm.
happened to be the head of their undergraduate psychology department, because I
Okay.
had to make sure that this program didn't do harm to children and families. So
Right.
that was the third person that I visited with about this. And
Mhm.
since then, I have spoke to well over a dozen psychologists about this program, its attributes and its traits, and they are part of an advisory board vertical that will be engaged with us for as long as we exist.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Good stuff. What skills are required for the facility staff, and how many will you have in that initial home of 16, or they're a part of the 16?
Yeah, so I'll tell you about the staff, and then I'll tell you about our licensure, and then I'll tell you about that number.
Mm-hmm.
So the staff will be comprised of a house mom / house dad. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't use the term house mom, but I use it in a gender neutral fashion.
Right.
And will be the person who establishes a culture of the house, who establishes that strong nurture and that focused love,
Mm-hmm.
ensure that the children are receiving what they need to receive.
Right. A little tough, strong love there.
In the way that that figure within the household always does it. I mean, that has to be present. This can't be different than that. You have to have them feel that love and that authority figure who has their respect. So that person will be there. That person will actually live within the house in an apartment that's built within that house.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that house mom person.
Yeah.
That's the person who's going to make sure that we know how it is that we treat each other, how it is that we love each other, how it is that we disagree with each other, how it is that we get back from that.
Mm-hmm.
Why it is that your mom is important, why it is that the rest of your family is important. All of that comes through that person. That's going to be our most important hire.
Yeah, no, that is the most important hire. And how are you going to go about doing that?
So the sourcing of it first, so it's going to be sourced by a person that we've engaged who's part of our team. Her name is Trevine Crawford. She's greatness.
Mm-hmm.
And she's in charge of going out and procuring the talent for House One and for the staff writ large.
Okay.
That's the job. She did that job very well in the military in Iraq. So she will be great at me giving her a set of requirements in terms of what we're trying to accomplish, and her going out and finding the people with the characteristics and traits to do it. Okay. We're going to look at churches because we think that church congregations are a good place to find those folks. Mm-hmm. We're going to look at retired teachers. We're going to look at retired counselors. We're going to look for people who have made a life or a career out of learning how to do the things that I described earlier that role has to be good at.
All right. Sounds good.
We'll find them. Go ahead.
No. One other question. Rolling said, I think children are missing a wilderness survival skill. A lot of Black parents learn this because they grew up on a farm are there components outside of academics and psychology? Could you get funding from sporting good companies or hiking organizations like REI or Sierra? And then also too, I can only imagine you're there in Dallas. You got all the Cowboys and you got all these guys that grew up in Oak Cliff in that area. You know, are they coming on board, or you haven't really approached them as of yet?
Yeah, so we have, to answer your last question first, we've not approached those folks yet.
Okay.
We will, and they will engage for all the reasons that other folks have really sort of gravitated toward the program. We will get the right professional athletes to engage with this. I'm very confident in that.
No, I see this hands down. This is like, if you don't believe in this, then something is wrong with you.
I don't think you want to be the African-American professional athlete who says, I have no interest in that.
Right. No.
I don't think that's a great look, right?
Yeah, right.
To the first part of the question, which was engaging kids in wilderness activities and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So here's the answer to most of our questions will ultimately play against this backdrop. What would happen if your child expressed an interest in an area in a typical middle class or above household? There are very few things that we're going to force upon these children. There are things that we will expose them to, however. So we will give them first exposure to a broad array of things. Once we give them exposure, they will come back and they will articulate an interest in something, either by the way that they behaved when we gave them the exposure, or by an interest that they articulate later.
Right.
Just like any other parent who has resources does, if that child expresses an interest in something, you then invest the resources to cultivate that interest and see how long they ride that interest.
Right.
At some point, they either proceed with it or they disconnect and they become interested in something else.
Right. True.
Kids currently don't have that option because the family's resources are limited.
Right.
With class, they will have that option. So those who've been exposed to wilderness camping and that kind of thing, who express an interest, they will get more of it. Those who express an interest in music, once they're exposed to that, will get the music lessons. If it's coding and programming, they'll get more of that. That's the thing. We're going to feed interests that present, that sort of bubble up out of the kids as we expose them.
Right. And I that is so key for people of color and children of in our community, because we don't get those experience. We don't get the experience of, okay, well, if you want to be an artist, you want to be a dancer, you want to be a writer, you want to be, a musician. We don't really give those opportunities because, one, it costs money, and you don't have it. So kids tend to pick up whatever they can do that's really, free. So that's why basketball is so important, because all it takes is a basketball. You can go down and you can do that. Or, but when you start talking about taking lessons and music lessons and stuff of that nature, that is a challenge. So I can only imagine the partnerships that you can use right there in South Dallas that are available. Have you started looking at the different partners that you want to have an affinity to in order to bring into your program?
Yes. So what we've done is to sort of identify targets that exist in areas of predictable interest for these kids. And so we have our targets lined up. And then once we actually have like a cohort of children and we know what their initial interests are, we're going to go and we're going to tap into them. Many of them have already said, hey, if you have a child who's interested in X, we will help you with that. So we're going to tap into it when we have a group of kids and a set of expressed interest.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. We're going to get through some of these questions because we've been talking and we got people out here wanting to know. You got them interested, Randy. Our current situation with this virus and a neglect administration has me thinking academics are a luxury. Children need common sense and tenacity. I agree with that 100%. What I also see with this pandemic is the disparity that kids have when we went from in-learning, classroom learning, to remote learning, where we had, which I think, and this is, if I was the CBC and La Raza and all these organizations, people, groups that's on Congress, they need to be lobbying for broadband to be free, because the mere fact with Google, Apple, and Microsoft, every kid in this country could have 8 laptops. That is the number.
Wow.
And right now we see that disparity because African American kids are using their phone as their computer when they get home.
Right.
And you're seeing a drastic shift in attendance. And when I say attendance online, people are still seeing, things drop off to 50%, and even in some classes, 25%. Right. So, are you looking at corporations to be able to do value in kind services such as broadband, such as computer giving, stuff of that magnitude, so these kids do have that consistently throughout?
So yes, we will, is the short answer. We have a couple of corporations in town that have already made just really significant contributions to us being able to stand up this program. I won't mention too many for fear of forgetting some, but Toyota has loaned us the services of an industrial engineer who has done a great job for us in helping to document process. Hank Williams, he's a great guy. And Sendero, which is a technology consulting firm.
Right.
Really contributed a lot to our efforts to develop an operating system. So they've been great. Now, those same organizations, as we go forward with children, will step forward with the kids who are in the program to make sure that they're being enriched. But I don't want to lose the essence of the person's question. The essence of their question appeared to be, hey, this cognitive thing is great, but what are we doing about common sense and that sort of thing, right? So here's my thought on that. The bottom line is that there was no road out of Pleasant Grove where I grew up that was paved solely with common sense or solely with cognitive chops. You need a combination of those two to reach your best self. And so what we plan to do with these children is not to generate a legion of eggheads that come out of the program. So we're going to have very well-rounded kids whose cognitive chops have been sharpened as much as they can, but they're not going to be divorced from the common sense that you need to really make it in life.
Right.
Resiliency counts. Creativity counts. The ability to just be analytical counts.
Yeah, especially in the world especially in the world we live today, because entrepreneurship is driving this economy, as you can see, and driving the world. We're not a manufacturing economy anymore. We're all about, which is the problem we're in right now, because we're so service driven. So, growing these kids up, not necessarily, and I think me and you had a conversation, it wasn't necessarily just to see them go off to college, but also to get a trade, become the best electrician that you even, eventually become your own electrician and you own your own plumbing company, electrician, company, or whatever the case may be, but you're giving them the necessary tools for them to see that as an option. I
like to think about it as, I'm not here to modify the plan that the Lord has for you in your life. We amplify it. Okay. So whatever it is that's been poured into you from a capability standpoint, we want you to be able to strive to reach it, and we want to remove the environmental barriers to it. If that means that you become a white collar worker, fine, great. We're going to celebrate your success. But if you become a really, really good electrician, plumber, or a smart manufacturing employee, we're going to celebrate that too, because the neighborhoods we serve don't produce that mix of white collar, blue collar participants the way that we would like.
Right.
They produce different outcomes.
Right.
So getting the typical mix of white collar, blue collar would be an amazing success and would allow these kids to just live better lives, and the families too.
Yeah, true. We got a lot of questions, so we're gonna be quick. Okay. Great on-site. Okay, so everybody said great on-site site resources will be important. Morgan said he was one of those kids. He would have really. It was excellent programming, understanding their limitations. Oh, you're not overreaching. You understand your limitations. Great question. Great comment, Morgan. I agree. Morgan also said, I love the fact that they are not zero-sum focused, that every kid is not right for college. There are a myriad of career opportunities. I love that too. What else we got down here? Stephanie stated, well, yeah, are you going to follow them throughout their school years and assist with paying funding or those who desire to go to college or a trade school? Good question, Stephanie.
That is a good question. So there are things that are in development that I can't discuss now because they're still in development that would create supplemental funds to enable them to go to college. There are colleges in town that have professors, presidents that I have great relationships with.
Okay.
We're working the pathway to where these kids can actually attend school at that college.
Okay.
And have there be a pathway there that we have worked together to define. I mean, one of those is Paul Quinn College here in town. It's a historically Black college. Michael Sorrell's the president there. He's my good frat brother, and we've been friends since we were young kid lawyers in this town. The other one is Bob Mong over at the University of North Texas at Dallas. We have worked closely with them to figure out a way to find a pathway for these kids to be able to attend those colleges in a way that's entirely affordable and their families' finances won't preclude it. I'm confident that we'll find something there.
Okay. Sounds good. I love it. So we got DePelsha on, Morgan's on, Stephanie's on. DePelsha is at the Ford Foundation. Hey, we need you. That's a no-brainer. So in conclusion, because you do have a lot of talent there in Dallas, I think,
yes,
you got a lot of people there in Oak Cliff that came out of Oak Cliff, the Tamron Hall herself, you still got the musical giants like the Erykah Badu's of the world, who's there.
That's South Dallas. That's not Oak Cliff.
Yeah, well, South Dallas.
You know how it is. If I don't get that right, I'll hear about it.
I know, right? There are a lot of people there. I definitely will have your information for everybody, those who just joined this conversation. This is the type of conversation that we should be having. I think we should be having as a community. I think, Randy, what you're doing is way beyond when I say social innovation. I mean, social impact, yes, but social innovation, you're taking something that you grew up with and you are putting it's almost like your purpose. And it goes into my motto of love the way you live. When you figure out what it is that you want to do,
yes,
and you just start living and doing it right, it doesn't feel like work. It just feels like this is something that you've been blessed with, and that, hey, you're gonna touch and you're gonna reach others, and a lot of people are gonna go out there. Anybody got any last questions? Okay, there are a couple of more questions coming in. Charlie, can I contact that brother? Yeah, you can contact that brother. A similar program for remote learning he did a similar program for remote learning, underserved K through 12 and HBCU students, athletes via a virtual telethon out of Atlanta, where they raised money, $120,000 in a weekend. So definitely, John Cash went to Texas with us. With me. So he's in Charlotte. Great guy. And he's a bison. Stephanie said, it's a skill to be able to function in an environment where you are the only Black. Our son graduated from Paul Quinn College. Are you going to try to teach social skills? I think that's a part of the whole experience, right?
Yes.
That's part of, yeah.
Yes, we want to produce complete, folks that have the full skill set.
Right. Is your program benchmarking against the magnet programs during the 80s, quote unquote, or college prep programs? Is there a connection? The magnet school program model was prominent in Texas.
Yes, I'm familiar with the magnet school program, especially here in Dallas. It was introduced at the time that I was in high school, I believe.
Okay.
We will benchmark against those who are in the common grade level with the folks who are in our cohort. So we will benchmark against those who are in the public school system, those who are in the public charter system, the private charter system, the private school system. We're going to benchmark against all of them in the city of Dallas and in the state of Texas.
Okay. Well, in parting, Randy, because we've been here for an hour, good hour.
Fast,
I'm just still full with just all the things that are out here that, African Americans are doing, and this is the spotlight that this is basically why I'm doing this, is to basically be able to showcase all our talents, because we are wide and deep, but you just don't hear about it. Or it's very insular. It might be just happening in Dallas. And so to be able to bring this nationwide, I'm definitely glad to have you as a guest. And if there's anything that you want me to share with the people in the audience that are out here, please make sure you go into the comment section and, write your comments so Randy can get back in contact with you guys and keep this connection going, keep the funding going. I know a lot of people there in Dallas. You probably know some of the same people, but I definitely want to connect with you on that level to see if we are, in the same stratosphere there. But this is a great opportunity. I think you're going to touch and you're going to be a blessing to many, 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 many kids that comes through. So in parting, is there anything else that you want to say and leave the audience?
Well, I'll say this. I'm grateful to you for giving me the forum to have this conversation with your audience. I'm grateful that you took the initiative to do this, because you created something out of nothing. And I'm always impressed by people who do that. And I guess the parting message would be this: we have a choice as a community. We can bemoan our problems, or we can act to solve them. Right. And, the line of bemoaners is pretty long. We need a few more folks in the line of the actors, because it's up to us first.
There you go.
Yeah. Feel free to join in. You would be welcome in this universe. And the same skill set that I used to build a logistics company that had 49 consecutive quarters of operating profit. My partner in that logistics company was an African-American man who was a good friend of mine. The same talents that built that will build this.
Right.
This is fun.
No, it is. And I'm so appreciative. I'm glad we had a conversation. I'm glad I got a chance to meet you, and I'm glad your wife set us up to have this conversation, because it's one that is needed. And with that being said, I'm going to say good night, and we're going to be out. And thank you guys for tuning in tonight. And tomorrow we're going to have Princess Penty, the writer and executive producer and showrunner for Uncorked, his first direct movie on Netflix, as well as he's the showrunner for Insecure. So see you guys later. Thank you, Randy, for joining the show. You guys take care. All right.
Let the sun shine. 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 Let the sun shine.